structurally, a couple changes. Let me just point to them. This part where it starts to reshape itself and get more narrow, this should be more of a softer, gradual, instead of a quick in, and same thing on this side. And then the bottom part of my bottle also needs to be curved more instead of flat. Okay, so I'm going to take my pencil, my charcoal pencil, and create that change from the floor or from the ground. So it's not flat, but it is curving up. Right, so that looks a little better right in there. And then do the same thing on this side. So you have the option of A, making it bigger, which is kind of what I did instead of erasing it, and that just means I'm going to make this line come up more and blend it in. Or B, going ahead and erasing it, but since it's pretty dark, that value is pretty dark, I'm not using the eraser because it won't be beneficial if I go ahead and try and erase it to the white background. Right, so I'm just going to make it a little bigger, widen the structure. And then the other thing I'm going to make or do, clean my eraser really quick because I want it super white. And now I'm just going to go in and erase not the black, but the space between the black and the shadow, right? So that there's this little space in there as well. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So that could have been there before, but when I drew the shadow, I could have made that, taken that off when I did that. Okay. So now I'm also, not only did I reshape the bottom of the bottle, but I'm now reshaping the shadow. Okay. And if you look at the picture in the shadow lines up with the width of the bottle. So in this case, the shadow should not be bigger or wider than the bottle. So I'm just reshaping it as well. Okay. For now, I'm going to leave that there. Now that I fixed the bottom, now let's go ahead and fix the curving. Okay, once we fix this, or once I fix this, if you did it, if yours was better and more of a gradual and softer change, then you're good. You don't have to make these changes, but I do. So that means that this, you can do it with two ways: eraser and reshaping it and shaving it down, or adding more to it and making it bigger. Okay, I think that I'm going to go ahead and use my charcoal pencil to kind of smooth it out. So we really just need to get rid of these parts. So it's not, it's more of a gradual change between the change of the shape of the bottle. And now the hard part is going to be that it's an even change on both sides, so it looks symmetrical. And this is probably the toughest part when it comes to drawing a bottle like this. So I'm gonna just lighten up the previous edge, the edge that was wrong. Just to get a better view of the shape that we're fixing. Okay. And again, I'm not going too dark. You don't want to go too dark too fast. You want to be careful not to make the neck too wide either. I want it to stay the same as the picture that we have there. Okay. What do you guys think about this? Does this look a little better or more accurate compared to the picture? Yes, no, maybe.
No.
Oh, you know what I forgot to grab? I forgot to grab a piece of paper or toilet paper. I would suggest using a different piece of toilet paper or tissue, because if you notice last class, it gets dirty pretty quick. So having more than one, you can use one. You know how with a stump there's two sides? You can have one tissue paper or tissue for the dark areas and one tissue for the lighter areas, like you would for a stump. Now if you use a stump for this, you can, but you might be having to clean it pretty frequently and sanding it down pretty frequently. I'll use the stump when I'm doing the little details on the drawing, not for big sections or bigger sections like I am doing right now. For the bigger sections, use the tissue paper. Just gonna reshape the outline with the eraser on the left side. And then do the same thing on this side. It's a little bulky here. All right, what do you guys think about the shape now? Does this look more accurate? Yeah, all right. Okay. Now let's go ahead and start. Now, if for some accident or some reason you accidentally go off like that and you create a smudge, don't worry so much about that. As long as it's not like a solid black mark like this, then we can clean that up later with the eraser, okay? So don't get so bent out of shape if you accidentally smear it a little bit. All right, now let's go in and start doing the multiple values. Again, I'm looking to make sure some of these values are as accurate as can be. Remember, we have these light areas on both sides, almost like highlights. So I'm going to take my eraser now and start bringing those out because I went a little too dark. And now we can bring in those lighter values. The outline on the right hand side should not be dark. If you notice, between this highlight and the edge of the bottle is a little darker, but it's not as dark as it is down here. Okay, so be aware of that. Make it a habit of erasing your eraser to clean up the edges, so that you don't actually think that you're gonna make something lighter, but yet your eraser's darker, and then it ends up making it darker than you wanted. Also, feel free to rotate your paper around to get a better, cleaner edge or easier way to work on your drawing. You shouldn't have so much dust built up today from the charcoal, just because we used a lot of it last class. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and start making this side a little darker. If you notice in the picture, this bottom part in here is darker than the middle part. So I'm going to make that kind of match. And it's okay if I go ahead and blend out this little white, or not white, but lighter value on both sides. I can bring them up later on. Okay. So the charcoal drawing a lot of the time is a give and take. So you're adding value, and then if you went too dark, then you're taking away value, and then reassessing it. Oh, I took too much, let me put some more back in. And most of you should already know that that's kind of how it goes when it comes to drawing anything or even painting anything. You add something, you reassess it, you look at it, see if you need to add more. And so that's basically what I'm doing right now, going through my sections of the bottle, seeing what sections I need to add more value or take away more. Sorry, I locked up. Okay. And so I started at the bottom of the bottle, and now I'm just working my way up because a lot of the details are up here. It's the paper that's slanted, Matthew. So again, little details or little changes, subtle changes do make a difference. So the soft highlight is what I'm bringing up now. So not only are we drawing with charcoal, we're drawing with the eraser as well. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and lighten up here. If you compare this section here with this section here, this is too dark. It is darker down at the bottom, but it's not as dark up here. So now I'm going to take my eraser, again, just lightly drag it, not a lot. So this is also a good exercise to show you guys or teach you guys how to also think about how much pressure you're applying with the eraser. Because the instantaneous thing that people do is they'll just think that they need to erase the whole thing, right? But remember, we are just slightly taking away a value, not a lot, so I'm not applying a lot of pressure. Unless you went super dark and you need to go way lighter, okay? And then I don't know if you guys can see it at home, but there's this little space right here, almost kind of like a curve that goes this way. And it's very subtle though, it's not like an obvious line. Okay. And then I'm just making my way up the bottle to see the sections that I need to add to. So hopefully now your bottle's slowly starting to come to life in terms of adding the details. And remember, your bottle at the end of this should look 3D. Should look like it's curving, right? My bottom of my bottle doesn't look like it's curving on the inside. It does on the outside. And so what we need is some more value, or lighter value, to show up. Let me bring this up. So I haven't really touched the charcoal. If you've noticed, I've just been using the eraser to draw with.
Boom. Yeah, we can get you, Bonnie, we can get you so much today.
Okay. Alright, so now let's go ahead and move to the top where the neck is, right here. Okay, so this is where you want to be careful with the pencil. And if you want, this is a point where you can make it a little pointy. Just be mindful of how pointy you make the pencil so that you don't just first press, it doesn't break, and you have to sharpen it again. When you sharpen, if you're going to sharpen your pencil like I am, make sure you're rotating it so you get a nice even point. Okay. Now it's darkest here. And then it comes down. In this section, you can use the tissue paper with your finger, like this. Or you can also start using a stump if you want, if your finger is too big for that one section. For example, mine is a little too big. So I'm going to grab my stump and be aware that it's going to make your stump pretty dirty pretty fast. And now I'm just adding a little bit of charcoal where it needs to get darker. And then take the stump, kind of blend it with the other values. And then coming in and looking at the little ones. And so this is the top of the bottle is where you have the most details. So you want to really pay attention to those. I'm going to zoom in to the top of the bottle so you can see it a little better and see what I'm working on. Now, remember how this is all kind of smudged on the edges? Don't worry so much about the edges yet, because we can still clean those up. Let's focus more on the inside of our bottle before we start thinking about the background. I'm just going to take my stump now and work along the edge just to smoothen out and get a nice even line and clean line along the edge of my bottle on the inside, so that later when I'm ready I can go ahead and clean up the outside.
Is this where we would find a farm in this kind of place? No.
So far, what's been the toughest thing for people in regards to the bottle?
Okay? In Spanish, Kingsley, in Spanish, this is called a ciudad. Ciudad. Everybody say ciudad. Ciudad. And we're going to go like this and pretend we're building a ciudad with our hands. Ciudad. Okay? For the word ciudad, I want you to do this.
Starting?
Okay.
What do you mean starting? Like where to start?
Oh, yeah. What does it say?
Leo.
Everybody unmute themselves. You're not unmuted. Unmute yourself.
Give me a minute.
Hold
I'm
on,
gonna
hold on,
turn
hold
down
on. Unmute yourself later. I can't see you, honey.
sound on my son's class.
Here we go.
Yours improved a lot, or what, Matthew?
Leo.
Or are you referring to like what it was before on mine?
Ciudad.
Again, it's always a good idea when you sit down for the first time to do a drawing.
Leo.
Don't think that it's gonna be perfect the first time. It's always a good idea to come back to your drawing. If you've spent like a whole day working on one particular thing, your eyes are tired of it, whether you think of it or not. Taking a break and going back to it with what I call fresh eyes is super important. If you don't do that, you don't see those mistakes sometimes. Just like with the curve, right? The bottom, the middle, right? You may not see that the first time. And that is also why I like to do the big sections first and get a nice base value and then slowly start working towards the details. It's a more broader way of kind of going at a drawing as opposed to like focusing on one thing one at a time, which you can do. I'm not saying you can't. Okay. All right, what do you guys think about details right now in terms of the inside of my bottle compared to the picture? Here, let me move my drawing over to the left so it's closer to the image. So looking at my drawing, looking at the bottle on the left, what should I add? What can I take off? I wouldn't say it's amazing. It's getting there. But what else could I touch on for the inside? Remember, we haven't cleaned out the background or we haven't finished the shadow either. Okay, yes. Highlights for sure. So Matthew's referring to this one here, right? I think the highlight on the left is too big on my drawing, if you look at it. So if you look at the highlight on the left, it's too big here. It's almost like I need to swap it. I need to put this one over here to the right more. So let me go ahead and make this one more noticeable. By the way, the way you draw your highlight on your bottle can also affect what the shape looks like on your bottle. So if you make a highlight that's super straight, it's going to make your bottle look more straight. So that's why you need to be accurate with the curve of the highlight that you're drawing. Even though the outline could be spot on, but the highlight may be off. All right, let me make this a little darker. Remember, these lines are very subtle. They're not like huge and obvious, because in the image they're not huge and obvious either. Okay? So if they're too obvious, you need to grab the charcoal and put a little bit more on there to kind of make it more subtle. Okay? And then anything that needs to be blended, going to do that. Okay. How's that for the highlight? On the right and the left. Is that better? Oh, hey Sharoon, you have a Miss Corbett meeting with her? I'm gonna put it in the chat. The link. Sharoon, go ahead and click on that link. Alright, what else, guys? Anything else? In terms of inside, values matching.
Yo veo la
Hmm?
foca.
I'm gonna have a more even shadow now. Since I think I'm pretty good for the inside for now. Let me go ahead and work on the shadow now.
Yo veo la
And so all I'm doing is making sure that I have an even value throughout the whole thing as best I can for now. And then if I went too dark, which I think I did, I'm gonna go grab the eraser and just drag it over to lighten it. But the key or the goal that I'm trying to achieve now is making the shadow have an even value throughout the whole thing. And then I'm gonna clean up the outline of it. That looks better on the inside. There we go. So within the shadow, there's some reflection. If you notice, right in here on my shadow, it's a little darker closest to the bottle, which is down here. Just gonna take the pencil and make this a little darker. And the same thing on this side, just a little bit, so you can notice the difference. And then blending with the stump, just because it's a small area or a small section. Same thing on the other side. Okay. All right, now let's go ahead and clean up things. So I'm gonna start with the top and clean it up. Now for the eraser, I would try and have one that has a sharp edge along it so you can get into the little corners for it. Okay, so let me clean up my eraser. Now it's nice and clean. Okay, now I can go into those little edges and use it. Again, try and use your breath to get rid of those shavings instead of trying to use your fingers. Sometimes it'll smear it instead of get rid of it. Okay. Sorry, I hope you guys can't hear what's happening in the background. And then fixing that up. And now let's close it. Okay. Give me a minute, guys. And then doing the other side now, rotating the paper. This is where it's important to rotate your papers when you're doing this, and then just following along the edge.
Papa,
I
want to do some homework.
Okay. And cleaning along the edges. Okay. Espérate un ratito, okay? And then clean up any smudges that you may have had on your background. And then, oops, I haven't done the shadow yet. Now, when it comes to charcoal, in pencil, you guys know when you pack up a drawing or put it in your folder and then you move your backpack around and it smears, right? Charcoal is even worse. Okay, there is something you can use to spray charcoal. Let's see if I have it. It's called fixative. And what it does, it seals your drawing if you're using charcoal, so that doesn't smear anymore. Thought I had a can of it here, but I don't see it. And so what it does is just like really light glue that'll make the charcoal stick to the paper better. You can still continue to work on it or draw on it, but it won't let you erase some of the darker charcoal values that you put on there.
Do that.
Okay. No.
That thing.
Mm-mm.
That container.
Okay. All right. There is your bottle in charcoal. All right. Let me bring out some of these little highlights a little bit more. So now we have a nice good shape of our bottle. And now bringing out those little hot spots is going to be important to make it stand out more. And then up here, if you happen to have one of those erasers that look like it's like in a pencil form that has a little point, by all means use that. Or if you have one of these kneaded erasers that you can convert into a point, by all means also do that. So make this into a point like that, and now bring up the highlights to make the top of the bottle more noticeable. Okay.